and welcome to another episode of the Marco Podcast,
a show dedicated to the realness of organization and entrepreneurship. This space was created for every woman who needs motivation or inspiration to get organized and to keep going after her dream. I'm your host, Angel J. Sit back and prepare for valuable tips, resources, laugh, and much more. If this is your first time here, welcome, and thanks for joining. If you've been hanging around for a while, welcome back, and I hope you brought a friend. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am talking with Regan Bashara. Regan is a numbers witch and bookkeeper. She is conjuring empowerment for passionate, open-hearted entrepreneurs in the United States. Regan helps you track and organize your numbers to quickly build wealth while aligning with your principles and ethics. Wealth allows you to take back your financial agency and start living out your big dreams. Everyone, let's welcome Regan. Hi, Regan. How are you?
Hi, I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I am excited as well. So, Regan, how long have you been an entrepreneur and how long have you been doing bookkeeping?
Yeah, so I was a bookkeeper at an accounting firm for about 7 years before I decided to take the leap and become an entrepreneur myself. I started my business, All Ease Accounting, in 2022 in May. So I will be coming up on my 2nd year anniversary in business in just a few months.
Okay, cool. And so what made you want to take the leap from working at an accounting place to just doing your own thing?
Yeah, I really cut my teeth on a lot of like big accounting and bookkeeping projects at that firm, but I wanted to, kind of not be held back in terms of my creativity. I wanted to kind of do my own thing, of course, be my own boss, all that, but I wanted to like be able to say yes to the work I want to do, no to the work I don't want to do, the people I don't want to work with, and to do things like this, like come on podcasts. I host my own podcast. I have a lot of creative ideas for business that I want to implement. And to me, it just made more sense to be in business and do that for myself.
I completely get that. And it's really cool that your job that you were doing was actually what your business is, because a lot of times with entrepreneurs, you see that like we end up starting businesses that have nothing to do with like the 9 to 5 that we are working. It's like completely something totally different. So I think it's so cool when someone turns their 9 to 5 into like their own business because they're that passionate about it. So, and I mean, accounting, that's awesome. I hate numbers. Like numbers they are my worst enemy. And my son loves math. And so he's always giving us like these math problems and I'm over here like, and he doesn't just be like, like simple
let
stuff.
Let me Google that.
Right. Like he doesn't do like simple stuff. So he's 8.
Right.
And so he'll be like, dude, I'm still on what's 10 plus 15. I'm like, I've lost it. And I'm like, why don't you tell mommy what it is? And he knows what it is. Like, he'll give you the answer. And
he's like, just quizzing you. He just wants to make sure that you know.
That's all. I'm like, you, and I don't want to be like, mommy doesn't do math because I don't want to discourage him from it. But I'm like, dude, chill out. I'm not the one.
Mommy doesn't do math.
Mommy doesn't do math. Like, but chill out. So how did you get into accounting? Like, did you just always love math or how did that happen?
That's so funny that you asked that because I have a degree in math and physics. I am a math girly through and through. I feel like everybody really struggles with math at some point in their life. Like we've all had that moment that we look back and we were sitting at the kitchen table being like trying to do our homework at 2 a.m. with our parents and they were frustrated and we were crying and we all have that math trauma.
Yeah.
I am no exception, but I eventually got to the place where it was just so interesting to me to like solve problems that way, to like look at a world where we set up these rules and then we like prove things with those rules. And that's really what it comes down to with math. I ended up kind of interning at a CPA firm while I was in school for math. And I just was like, actually, I think this is kind of cool. Like I was doing like some bookkeeping projects, not really taxes, but it's like a big puzzle that you kind of have to just get all this data together and then like figure out what's going on with the numbers. And I mean, I totally get that people are like, I can't, I don't want to talk about money. I don't want to talk about numbers. It brings up a lot of emotions. I understand that completely. I have a lot of feelings about my own money.
Yeah.
But like the solving problems aspect of it, the analysis of it, like working through a puzzle like that to me is just really interesting and fun. And yeah, I am passionate about it, but I went through math and physics for school and like got my degree in that. And then I just completely did the opposite. Like I've never taken an accounting class in my life.
Oh,
I
wow.
learned it all on the job. So
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Numbers traumatize me.
yeah.
I know exactly where my trauma started, and
Mhm.
you're gonna laugh at me, and everybody who's gonna hear this is probably gonna laugh at me too. But my trauma started probably about second, third grade
Mhm.
with subtraction. And, I was like,
Mm.
okay, cool. I got the hang of it. But then it's like, oh, you got to carry the number. And
Oh yeah.
then you got to do, and then, sometimes you had to carry it. Sometimes you didn't have to do it. So that messed me up there. And then as
Yeah.
soon as I like got the hang of that,
Nope.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
So
It's not
then,
gonna work.
fourth grade long division came, and I was like, okay, cool. So, finally got
Yeah.
like the hang of that. And I was like dealing with my trauma and trying to work through it. And then they added algebra. I don't know why
Yeah.
letters and numbers need
Yeah.
to mix and mingle. I
Right.
don't care what X equals. I don't know why it's missing. I don't know how you got to C. I have never used that in my life. But after we started mixing letters and numbers, and I had to find X and decide where C went, I was done.
Yeah.
I was
You're
finished.
like, find X. I don't know. I'm not a
I don't know,
detective.
nor do I care. And then the problems in school when they were like, you have to get the answer where they'd only give you half credit because you had to get the
Yeah.
right answer, but you also had to show your work. Like,
Right. Right.
I could kind of make it work with trying to figure out the answer, but telling you how I
Mhm.
got that,
Mhm.
no. So the fact that you taught yourself like accounting and learned it on the job, like kudos to you. Like you go, girl. Because me,
Yeah.
I probably would have been like, this isn't for me. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I mean, you start small with a project and it's like starting with just the data entry, which anybody can put a number in a thing. Like
That
if
I
I
can
tell
do.
you this number needs to go here, that's like the basis of it, right? And from
Okay.
there, it was like building on learning kind of like the chart of accounts. Like what's the difference between an asset and a liability? What's the difference between an asset and expense? Like just kind of all those things I figured out like as I was going through. I had my own questions. I would ask questions. I would go to Google and just like kind of figure it out. So like I guess I do just kind of have that tendency towards solving a puzzle, solving a problem, like trying to figure out something that I don't already know. So I guess some people are like more or less tend to be,
Yeah.
I'm not interested in finding out the answer.
Yeah, I don't have time for it. But it's like, some people are just really good at math. Some people are really good at like English and stuff like that.
Mhm.
It's how we balance each other out. It's how we balance
Yes.
the world out there.
Yes.
So how do you help small businesses with their accounting and their bookkeeping?
I pretty much have like two different types of services that I provide.
Okay.
One end of it is that I am just doing it for them. Like
Okay.
people just hire me to do their bookkeeping and accounting because they are the business owner that's like, I mean, I could learn how to do that, but why am I going to bother when I can pay somebody else? I can afford to pay somebody else. They're going to do it correctly. Like they're cool with that. So they just hire me. And that's great. I love that. And then I also have the folks that are like, I don't know if I can afford that yet. And they like see the benefit of learning how to do it themselves. Like they actually want to learn how to do it themselves. And so what I do for those folks is I consult with them and I also offer trainings on QuickBooks Online. Like that is pretty much the platform that all of my clients use. It's what I use for my business and they want to learn like how to do it themselves for a little while. And then eventually they're like, I will hire you to do it eventually. But for now, like I can just do it for myself. And I'm like, that's great.
Okay.
So I kind of teach them my 3-step process to monthly bookkeeping that involves, categorizing your transactions, reconciling your bank accounts, and then reviewing and looking at your reports. Because if we've put in all this data and we've made sure that it's correct, like what is the point unless we actually sit down and read our financial reports?
That definitely makes sense. And so do you have more people that are like just do it for me, or more people that are like, okay, I want to learn, or is it a balance of both?
Right now, I feel like it's pretty balanced. I've done a lot of trainings this year. So this year was my first full calendar year in business. And I feel like I did a lot of trainings, whereas last year I had a lot of people hiring me for like doing their bookkeeping for them.
Okay.
So I don't really know like if that's going to swing back the other way next year or if it's like a seasonal kind of thing. I'm still kind of like too new in my business to know like what are the trends. But I think that like new businesses are being started every day. So like there is always going to be that person that's like, I just need somebody to kind of teach me how to do this. And I find that there's not a lot of bookkeepers out there that do the education part of it. Like they're just available to hire. So I want to be able to help folks figure out how to do it for themselves if that's what they have decided they want to do.
Yeah, I definitely I think you're pretty much right about that, because most of the time when I see people offering bookkeeping services, it's just them doing it for the person,
Mhm.
not actually educating on it.
Yeah.
And I think that both are good. Like, I think
Mhm.
it's good to have, someone that you can outsource that to and who can do it for you. But I also think that it's good to have some knowledge of what's going on, because
Oh, yeah.
if something were to happen to that person or anything like that,
Yeah.
you need to be able to do a little something. Like, you may not be able to do all
Right.
the heavy lifting, but you need to be able to at least hold yourself over until you can hire someone else or find someone else, or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. So I think it's really good that you're offering that
Mhm.
education portion of it as well.
Yeah. And even the folks that I do bookkeeping for, I still want them to kind of understand like what's happening, the process,
Right.
like what exactly am I doing? I don't want to be messing around with anybody's numbers and they're not like aware of at least of what's going on. So
Yeah.
I set up a lot of like boundaries between me and my clients' books. Like I don't want to have access to transact. I just look at what happened after the fact, like after it happened, and then I
Okay.
categorize it. But I love for my done for you people, like I still want to meet with them and go over their reports with them, like learn about their business, like what strategies are you implementing? What is your goal for 2024? Like how can we get that reflected in the bookkeeping so you can actually track your goal and see like where along in the process you are, like what do we need to take the little steps in between to get to your goal, like how can we get that in the bookkeeping so that you can read your reports, understand, and like use that information. So it, even with the people that are just like contracting it out and hiring it out, I still find that they want me to be like communicating with them and still educating them. And I'm happy to do that as well.
Okay. And you also help with taxes, correct? Or
I don't do tax returns. I did
okay.
for many years. I'm
Okay.
still like qualified to do tax returns because I do the continuing education every year to kind of make sure that I stay up to date. It changes every year. The tax law is constantly changing.
Oh,
Every single
yes.
tax season, they're like putting new stuff in and then they take new stuff out. And so I stay up to date with all of that because the bookkeeping does pretty much transfer completely over to the tax return. Like that's how it works. So I want the information that I'm putting in and the reports that I'm preparing to be as accurate as possible so that my people can get their like maximum deductions.
What are some things that you've noted? Well, I should say first, what are some tips that small business owners can do? Like, if they don't have an accountant or a bookkeeping, what are some things that they can do to kind of prepare themselves for tax season or to pay their taxes?
Yeah, totally. I think that it all starts with a great organization system. And people are like, well, what the hell does that mean? Like, organization system means that we know what information you have and we know where to find it. So just like you go to the library and the library could tell you like what book is on which shelf and where to go, like that's the same kind of reference system that we need for our bookkeeping. If you went to Walmart or Starbucks and took a client out to lunch here, when did that happen? Where's that receipt? So having a good financial organization system starts with like a good way to sort your paperwork. Whenever you get paperwork, like you buy something, you get a receipt, you get a bill in the mail, invoices, all that. It needs to have a place to go that like we know where to look to find it. And then from there, sitting down and having like a weekly task, like an appointment with yourself, like a money date, some people call it, whatever. You just need about 15 minutes to kind of sort through your receipts, take a look at your bank account, see what's going on in your business, maybe, see who you need to send invoice to reminders to. So having like a good organization system and then having that regular appointment with yourself to manage your finances is like the best place to start. And from there you will see like, oh, I need to pay attention to this here. And so like it's different for every business owner. And because everybody's like brain works so differently, I
Right.
just want folks to like develop a routine and a habit that works for them, that they're actually going to come back and do.
Yeah, because once you get in the habit of it,
Mhm.
it makes it easier. So, and then you get that, and like you said, you get in the habit of it, and then you get that system going on. So now what
Yeah,
used to take you 15, 20 minutes, it may only take you 5 or 10 minutes, because you know what you're
exactly.
looking for and you know where to go, because you do have those systems in place. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, organization is definitely important when it comes to just any aspect of your business, because it
Mhm.
keeps things together and it makes things so much simpler. So
Yeah.
small business owners just kind of miss the mark on when it comes to accounting or preparing for their taxes with their small business?
I would say that when somebody comes to me and they're like, I need help, like I'm ready, I've been avoiding it all the time, like that is the key. If you avoid something like bookkeeping in your business, it is going to snowball. It's going to get bigger and bigger of a project, and like you're just going to feel more overwhelmed. And so when we have something that is just growing out of control, we're just going to like continue to ignore it. And I tell folks that come to me in that situation, like, just start today. Like, you can do one thing today to like put a receipt somewhere where it needs to go, or like just pull up your bank account and download last month's statement. Like, you can do little things like that to start on that, system, to start on that process. Like, if you've got a big accounting project, that can be done in chunks, but it's so much better to say, today I'm starting with like a new organization system that I'm going to follow, and everything else that like is already backlogged will find its place in that system. But if starting today, like if you're avoiding it because of how massive a project or a mountain it is to like get over, starting today will kind of like help you develop that system where all of that information is going to come to anyways. So the folks that are avoiding things, I think like that's probably just the biggest mistake, is ignoring it, avoiding it, kind of sticking your head in the sand, putting it off, like procrastinating.
Right, because it's not going to go anywhere, and
Yeah.
the IRS, they want their money, so
Yeah. And
probably
it'll be
should.
there when you get to it. Like, it's not going to change. So,
Right.
Do a little step today, make that 15-minute appointment with yourself every week and just set it to like recur forever. And then like keep coming back to it and keep doing those little parts. It will get done. Like, that's what I do with any big project. I just chunk it up into little pieces.
And so you said something about deductions. So I
Uh-huh.
know a lot of like business owners are like, oh, I took this person to lunch. This is a deduction. Oh,
Mhm,
I did
mhm.
this. It's for my business. It's a deduction. Are there any misconceptions or things that really aren't deductions that people have just took it upon themselves to decide that it is a deduction?
Yeah, I think meals is like the big one where everybody stays confused about what to do as far as meals go. And that really depends on who's preparing your tax return. Like, I'm the bookkeeper, so I'll put it somewhere, but whoever's filing the return and like signing their name on the return as your preparer is the person that's going to have to stand up and say, like, we made these claims, we said these were expenses, and they have to prove it. So I put things where I think that they should go, but it's always up to the tax person to decide that whenever it gets filed. So when it comes to meals, you only get to claim 50% of the meals associated with like you going out and having a meal for your business.
Oh,
If
wow.
you've got like employees and you order like the office, like we're coming up on the holidays, usually people like cater out a lunch, for their employees for the holidays. And I guess this will be coming out in 2024, but like
Yeah,
every
that's
year
fine.
there's
Yeah.
holidays.
Right. There's holidays. Yes.
Like you can cater like the office lunch for the holidays, and that can be 100% deductible. If you take a client out to a meal, as long as it's not a 3 Michelin star extravagant like meal, I consider that like you building that relationship, you networking with your clients, like that is part of like you building your business. So to me, I would say that that is 100% deductible, but they could come back and be like, no, you can't take 100%. You can just take 50% of that. But the way I run my business, the way I know a lot of folks, especially B2B, like business to business folks, like you're building a relationship with a client, you're building relationships in your network. So like going out for those meals where you're sitting down and talking about your business, and getting referrals from people, like that is you marketing, and that to me is 100% business related. Another thing that people think that they can claim or that they get confused about is like when you're a sole proprietor, a single member LLC, like I am, you're not incorporated, you take owner's draws to pay yourself from the business. Like I'm not on payroll. I just take draws. I don't have like taxes withheld from my pay. I'm not on a salary. If I were incorporated, if I were an S corporation, I would have to take a salary. That's a requirement. But just as a sole proprietor, like you just take a draw, and that's not an expense to your business. It's considered equity because you put in sweat equity, you put in your personal finances into the business as an equity investment. It's the same bucket that it comes out of. So when you take draws, the business income or expenses, that's not something that you can claim, but you also don't get taxed on it. Like I'm pulling draws out of my business every week, every other week. That is not something that I have to claim because I put equity into the business and then I withdrew it from the business.
Okay, that's good to know. And that actually made me think of a question because
Mhm.
I'm a, sole proprietor, single member LLC,
Mhm.
whichever one, I'm not sure which the correct term is. I have an LLC.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so they always say to have a separate account, not to mix your business
Yes.
money with your personal money.
Mhm.
So going back to kind of the example that you gave of, you can pull out however much money is in the
Yeah.
account that you have. So let's say that funds are running low in the business
Mhm.
account because you've been doing your draws and stuff, and then funds are running low and you need to pay something. If you then pull it out of your personal account, like how does that work? How does that affect? Like, I guess what's the reasoning behind saying if I'm able to do a draw, what's the reasoning behind saying don't mix the two?
So not mixing the two is usually related to like the business's liability. So if you have an LLC, that stands for Limited Liability Company in the United States, and that can have some protections between your business and personal assets and funds. So if you have a separate business bank account that you just put money into whenever it needs money, it's not like connected to your personal account. So if someone were to sue the business for whatever reason, your personal assets and accounts and funds wouldn't be liable to be like to pay any sort of liability for the business getting sued. So that's
Okay.
usually the reason that people say to separate it. As a bookkeeper, I just don't want to see what you're paying for in your personal account. It's so much easier for me to not have to sift through all of your personal stuff. Like, I don't care, no judgment. Like, I literally don't care what you spend your money on. The more transactions I have to go through, like the longer I have to spend. So that's why I say to keep it separate. It just makes the bookkeeping so much simpler. So if you needed to put money in, that would just be your owner's investment. And it's not income to the business. It's an equity investment into the business. It's the same thing as if you had somebody that wanted to invest in your business as like a capital venture. They were like, I want to buy in. I mean, you're not publicly traded, but
Thank you so much for that explanation, because
yeah.
I've heard, so many different things. Like, so many people are like, oh, you can't pay yourself in business. Oh, you do have to pay yourself like this.
I don't know
Google
about
gets
y'all,
us
but
in.
I have bills.
Yeah, right. Like, and that's like what I'm like, okay, so if you're the business owner, when I'm like, well, if you're the business owner, you're not supposed to pay yourself from the business. I'm like, well, how the heck are you supposed to get paid here? Like,
Yeah.
I'm so confused here. As
Right.
finally, as I, researched and I learned and stuff, I learned that obviously
Mhm.
you can, but I think that that's just
Yeah.
something that, one of those misconception type things.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
thank you for that
Yeah,
explanation.
you could just take money out, but listen, if your business has bills to pay, like you could take money out, you're just going to turn around and put it right back in.
Right
So,
back in there. Right. Yep.
yeah.
Oh, so how can you boost the back office of your business through systems and procedures?
When you go to hire somebody, a contractor, virtual assistant, copywriter, or even if you want to hire an employee for your business, you're going to have to delegate things. Like, what are you hiring them for if you don't give them something to do?
Right.
But if it only lives up in your head, they have no way to like know what needs to be done, when it needs to be done. What does it look like when it is done? Like, what is the correct way to do something? Who do they need to report to whenever it's done? Who's going to be going back and checking on that work? Those are all systems that like we just have to get out of our head, write it down, put it onto paper, dictate it into the Otter app. I love the Otter AI app. It is a dictation thing and you can put it in your Zoom meetings. I use it for just basically note taking. That way I can like sit there and have a conversation with a client and Otter takes notes for me. And then I go back and I'm like, okay, here's my to-do list. Here's the client's to-do list. Here's what we talked about. Sit down and dictate it. Sit down and write it down. Every single thing that you do into procedures. And that is going to go so far with helping the back office, meaning all the admin work, paying the bills, posting the social media posts, whatever else it is, like paying the rent. I don't know. What do you do in your business that like isn't the client work or isn't the product selling work? Like everything else that has to support the business operating. Let's get some procedures down for it and then ask yourself, do I need to be the one clicking this button? Does my brain have to be the one that shows up to do this task, or can I delegate this to somebody else? Delegate it to another human being, your virtual assistant, contractor, employee, or delegate it to a software that you already have access to. Automate some stuff. Like if you do this, if you click that, then this happens. Like, I want to automate everything in my whole life, to be quite honest. Like,
I'm with you.
I want to have time to sit down and like do creative things or like talk with my clients or go on podcasts and like come up with new ideas and offers. And that does not, I got to give up other stuff in order to sit down and have time and energy to do that.
Right. I completely agree with you on that. On my way home today, actually, I was like thinking about all the stuff that I needed to do and like finished up. And so I asked my husband if I could delegate some tasks to him. And so I texted him because we were texting about creamer because we had ran out of creamer. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to have to stop for coffee. And so I was like, so, I asked him if he wanted coffee. And then I was like, oh, do you want to be my assistant? And he texted back and he was like, no, thank you. I was like, no, thank you to coffee. No, thank you to being my assistant. No, thank you to both. Like, and he was like, assistant for what? I was like, my business and my podcast. He was like, oh yeah, no, thank you to that too. I'm like, really? Like,
so basically, he's on strike now.
I'm like, really, sir? I'm like, one time I fussed because you didn't put something in the right place when you offered to help me out, and now you just don't want to help anymore.
He's like, never again.
Yeah, he's like, nope. I'm like, oh, okay. And then my sister-in-law, I'm that one that I'm like, I need to delegate, but I have issues delegating because I think one time my sister-in-law was helping me with something. I was like, you didn't do it? No, I know what it was. She's supposed to be helping with something. And then I was looking for her and she was downstairs on a coffee break. I was like, man, we have work to do right now. You got coffee, you brought it back upstairs. So I'm gonna have to delegate outside of my family. I guess I promise to be a lot nicer to the people outside my family that I delegate to. I mean, I didn't think I asked them to do anything too hard, but they said that I wasn't paying them, so they were gonna do what they want. Yeah.
So they want to get paid. Okay.
I mean, I thought my love was enough. They told me that they told me I wanted too much for a volunteer position. I'm like,
you're like, you're drinking the coffee and the creamer that I bought.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Just kidding.
But no, delegation is a beautiful thing, and when you can get to that point, it is so wonderful and so great.
And it's so hard to take that first step, but there is something that you do every single day that you do not need to be the one to do it.
Oh, believe me, I'm over here trying to figure out. I'm like, I got like a list of things that I'm just like, okay, I would love to like pass this off to like someone else and let someone else, take a look at it. So well, Regan, thank you so much for sharing with us about taxes and bookkeeping and all those things that, we all want to make the money, but we don't want to actually deal with it most of the time. So
we're making a lot. Then we're like, I want to look at that number.
Right. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we go?
Yeah, like I said, I have a weekly podcast. It's called Money Through Ease. So if your folks want to come listen, we talk about money. We talk about numbers on there, but I promise we don't do a lot of math. But I just talk about like financial empowerment for entrepreneurs mostly. So they can come check it out.
Okay, awesome. And I'll make sure to link that in the show notes and tell everybody where they can find you at.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm at All Ease Accounting, EASE, on Instagram and Facebook. And on TikTok, I'm Ray Hammer. I just converted like my personal to my business. But I spend most of my time on TikTok. So come watch me there.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll make sure to get all of that linked into the podcast. Into the podcast show notes. I'll get all of it linked into there. So, well, Regan, thank you so much. And I hope you have. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Modco podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and learned something from it. Be sure to share this episode with a friend, family member, colleague, or anyone you think will enjoy it. Make sure you hit the follow or subscribe button. And if you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcasting app. That helps others to find us and gets us listed in other show recommendations. So you all know that I run on coffee, and so does the show. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can do so by clicking on the link in the show notes. Thank you so much, and chat soon.